Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. The trailers for this movie are, well, they're as good as the movie. Is that an appropriate way to say it? I don't know.
I don't know either.
My goodness.
There's a certain magic.
There's a certain magic. The trailer that I got to, the other trailers, it's like 2 minutes is like an action trailer. It's fine. But I'm thinking this is a teaser. The 1991 teaser. It's 1 minute and 9 seconds. And it has the sexiest voiceover. I think this guy is asking me out. He's like telling me what to do when I go to Southern California.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It is really, really great. In fact, we're gonna play this one. We're definitely gonna play this one. It shows off the sultry, sexy side of Point Break. How does the trailer, or I should even say, how do the trailers help you connect with the film, Andy?
It's a really interesting mix of trailers, and I guess it's the early 90s way to kind of pitch an action film. I mean, the first kind of the teaser that you're talking about, it certainly has an odd bit of humor with the with that sultry voice pitching, kind of the magic of the nightlife almost is what it's celebrating.
And it actually shows over a sunset. It shows Swayze sucking a lime out of a woman's mouth.
It sure does.
Superimposed over the blistering sunset of Southern California. So
it's pretty
sexy.
magical. It really
So
is
sexy.
magical. I like it better than the other trailer, only because the other trailer feels very much like, they were pushing to do an action trailer at this particular point in time, and it felt too long. It honestly felt like it really bogged down, and it felt like it ended like 3 times. I felt like, oh, here's the end of the trailer. Oh, nope, it's still going. It's like this is the Return of the King trailer. In the world of trailers, this is Return of the King, because it keeps ending. It's like, oh, and here's an ending. Oh, nope, it's still going. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, it's over. Nope, it's still going. Oh, there's a little bit more. And it really just kind of overstayed its welcome.
You really get the feeling that the editor kept finding really delicious one-liners. Really delicious. He's got all the material from the movie, and he cuts the trailer together, and it's exactly the way he wants it. And then he accidentally scrubs through a fantastic line. He's like, well, I better use that.
And
that's what it feels like to me.
And, as we've talked about in past trailers, they are very, very much wanting to always put their big moments in the trailer. So, Of course, we see Patrick Swayze jumping out of the airplane. That's something
the
that
money
is
shot.
the big money shot. And, of course, they're going to show it in the trailer and not save it for the film.
It probably literally costs them the most. When you think of insurance on Swayze falling out of an airplane, I'll bet it costs more than any of the other effects.
Did you hear the story about that?
Yeah, it was like they had to wait to the very last thing, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't let him do it, and it didn't sound like insurance was covering it. They're just like, "You want to go do it? Right. You go do it."
That's right. They wait till the very last minute.
Yeah, you can't do it while we're making the movie, and so they finished the movie, and they went and got that shot, which I think is great.
When Swayze is once again worthless to them.
Right. You could die and it won't matter.
What are you going to do?
On the coast of Southern California, you can only surf, party, and make love for so long before it's time to go to work.
Rock and roll.
27 banks in 3 years. Anything to catch the perfect wave.
I'm not a crook.
Patrick Swayze.
Fear causes hesitation, and hesitation will cause your worst fears to come true.
Keanu Reeves.
You think I joined the FBI to learn to surf?
Point Break.
Adios, amigo!
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight in the show, we're going deep cover with Johnny Utah in Kathryn Bigelow's 1991 surfing icon, Point Break. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you enjoy the show and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back channel conversations on Discord, help us pick movies for upcoming series, and listen to the members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee, where we talk movies, trailers, and more. And I bet we'll talk more Oscars on this coming week's show. Plus, we do have a battle of the lists of movies related to our show that week. This next week, in honor of this film, we're comparing lists of our favorite movies where someone has to go undercover. So just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
You know what? I think, is it safe to say this movie is unfairly lampooned?
I think that's fair to say.
It was better than I remembered. I expected to go in and just be laughing start to finish, right? I expected it to be just a mess. It is not a mess. I liked it so much better than Near Dark. There are a few words to describe the comparison. It's just deep and vast crevasse between these two movies. I actually feel like I had a great time in this movie. And yeah, there are some things that are ridiculous, but my sense is that the cultural gestalt has, or the cultural memory of this film is that it's a ridiculous surfing cop movie. And it turns out the surfing isn't as big a deal as they make it, or as memory would make it.
Well, I thought there was plenty of surfing in it. I mean, and if there was anything that I had forgotten is how much of like the training montage type of stuff there is. There's a lot more than I remembered. Like when Lori Petty is teaching him how to surf and everything, I'm like, God, there's really a lot of surfing in this. But that being said, I really do agree with you. I had so much fun with this movie. My recollection, because I probably haven't seen this since college, this was one of those movies that we would watch in the dorms. And everyone would kind of make fun of Keanu Reeves because this I think became, between this and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, really personified the kind of the joke that everyone made of Keanu Reeves, kind of that whoa surfer dude sort of guy that he seemed to be. And it's funny because that seemed to linger for so long. In fact, it may still be lingering.
Oh, it still lingers.
Despite the fact that I think he's proven himself so many times that he can do so much more. And so I think it's really funny that this did kind of in a way, it kind of sets the high bar for what that Keanu Reeves personality is like that whole, I mean, and it comes from moments like when he's talking to John C. McGinley, his FBI boss, who does say, do you have anything to report? And he's like, I caught my first tube today. I mean, that really is kind of like exactly why we make fun of Keanu Reeves. In all jest, I still think that he does such a great job in the film and has a lot of fun with Patrick Swayze. And I think Bigelow at the helm really made some nice choices, and I had a blast watching it.
I think you're absolutely right. And I feel like, back to, not to just land on Keanu, too hard. I think he actually did a fantastic job actually splitting the FBI, the young FBI agent persona and the undercover, Johnny Utah, the surfer, bit. And it wasn't that much of a what's the word, of a caricature. When he's out playing football on the beach, I don't get a sense that he's that, oh, whoa, hey, dude, he's not the Bill and Ted Keanu. He's very much the undercover cop Keanu. And I think it was played really smart. There are a few moments where, the general overacting in this movie really shines. And they usually involve Busey. Who's also a gem. Let me say, that guy's a national treasure. And when they are clearing the car from the first drop and it's night, and Keanu says, "Are you mad? Are you angry? It feels good, right?" That whole sequence, that is a forehead slapping moment. That is a forehead slapping sequence.
I was fighting in Quezon when you were wiping poop on your face as a baby or whatever.
Who does that? Who does that? I don't know babies who do that. Babies don't do that, Busey.
But that also really, I think, said a lot about Busey and just kind of him as an actor and what he was doing. And honestly, I mean, he had a few years before this, I mean, he had a major motorcycle accident.
He was dead. He was a dead man.
He was dead. He had major brain injuries and was basically brought back. And I think that he suffered a little bit, and his craziness certainly seems to show. But I mean, I really still enjoy watching him. I mean, he fits the energy of the film, and that's another element in this movie that just makes it work as well as it does.
I absolutely agree, and I think that those little moments of Business, I think that's what sort of gives the movie its off kilter memory. But it generally is a pretty darn good heist film, and with some interesting and I think a deeper sense of presence than people give it credit for, and not to mention some just incredibly opinionated action styling from Kathryn Bigelow, and I think it's a real standout. Our deep scene dive tonight is a absolute centerpiece for me in this film. I think she just really knows how to put the camera in the center of the action, and I think she does a great job. So the surf, we got to start with the surfing, which I think was actually really interesting. Building this set of four guys who are the essential surf crew. And actually, it starts with a much larger set of guys. And I think this is a really interesting mechanic. When Utah goes undercover, his job is to figure out who the 4-man crew is and uncover them because they are going to be the unit within the unit. And so he has to get to know them in the mix of all of the other surfers, including the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
Which is weird.
That was a strange little bit.
Yeah.
When Anthony Kiedis pops in there.
That was very strange. That was very, very strange.
But he fit. He did
fit.
a great job.
Oh yeah, no, he was perfect. He was perfect. So, what did you think of the surfing in terms of the action element? Did she treat it fairly, and was it a good element, or should this have just been another heist film?
No, I think think that the people involved in creating this story had a good idea of taking this idea of these bank robbers and connecting it to the world of these surfers, and finding this really interesting character in Bodhi that Patrick Swayze plays, where he really is kind of this Zen guy who's I mean, yes, he's in it to make money, but there was some element of it that, as he says, it was never about the money. It's like there's something about kind of the just, almost like finding yourself, or the challenge of it and everything, and like connecting yourself to something bigger. And that's something I really liked about him as a character, and kind of that Zen way that he played it, which I think Patrick Swayze just has that energy anyway. And so having him play Bodhi and kind of being the leader of this robbery surf gang, and then actually having him out there surfing and all these guys doing their surfing and everything, it ended up creating this element of the film that gave it something more that I don't think you would see in a different sort of film. And I know this film has been compared to like the Fast and the Furious and that whole chain of films. And I mean, really, you go back to the very first The Fast and the Furious film, it really is kind of the same story. But I think what both of these films do is they really envelop you, and particularly the undercover person, into the world in which he is going into. And that's what they do really well here, is they integrate Johnny Utah really nicely into this kind of world of surfing.
I think so too, and it didn't seem like a joke. It doesn't seem like a joke when you're watching the movie. It really doesn't. It feels like these guys actually have a purpose. They staged, in terms of casting, they ended up with these guys who are, you obviously have the sort of athletes and the athleticism of, Swayze, but they actually, stack the deck with some guys who are actually, quite exceptional surfers and career surfers, and that makes a difference in the look of the film. It actually looks legit. Like it feels very much like these guys are devoted, and not just to surfing, but to the extreme lifestyle. We've already mentioned the skydiving. There's some fascinating and really beautiful skydiving at the end. And I on this point, I'm interested in you talking about the difference between this Point Break and the remake Point Break, how they handled the skydiving. I didn't have the chance to watch the remake, so. What's your sense of the skydiving?
I didn't hate it as much as the critics did. I still felt that there were elements of fun in that film. I thought it was interesting the way that they kind of reworked it to have these guys. It really was like it was a group of people. It was far more than just surfing. They were trying to complete this legendary thing of these 8, impossible tasks where you're paired with nature or something like that. It was kind of a silly thing, but you got to see some really interesting, like, extremist sporting things going on, and I thought that was kind of exciting.
I think it's just extreme sports.
Not extremist things.
Extremist sports are different.
Sporting things.
Those are different.
I think that's the new term for it. Extremist sporting things. I think they're going to have a whole category at the Olympics. Anyway,
like alpine and extremist alpine.
Exactly.
It's very different.
Exactly. It's true.
Okay.
So anyway, that movie, it's nowhere near as good. It still is entertaining, but it's just the story, I think, was a lot less interesting. But watching all the bits that they did of the extremist sporting things was really interesting. In fact, the skydiving was I think the smallest part of it, and that was just an early scene when they're stealing money out of a plane. They're not even stealing money. They're dumping money out of a plane into a poor village in Mexico.
Yeah, I feel like they gave that away in the trailer of Point Break.
Yeah, and it's super early in the movie anyway,
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things. To that end, I mean, they certainly tried to amp all of that sort of stuff up in the second film. I don't think any of it works nearly as well as the first film. I think the first film really does capture that kind of that Zen essence better. I think a lot of that is because Kathryn Bigelow I felt like she seems to connect really well with the subjects in her film, whether it's this or bomb diffusing in the Hurt Locker. She seems to find that way in to really have her actors connect in a level with what they're really doing, where I buy it completely.
One of the interesting things about when you look at this group and this particular kind of approach to the film, the criminal element of the film, is that there is a sense of humanity in these guys. They have the a little bit of the Robin Hood vibe where they're definitely stealing money and they're not giving it to the poor, but they are taking it to fund their adventures around the world, but they are definitely doing it in a way that has some heart and some humanity to it, that they're doing it with insured money and they're not hurting anybody and that they have some principle, and that actually is a stage for conflict in the group later. And I think that works. I think that gives us a real sort of approach, a personality for us to latch onto inside these guys, because we are all torn in this same way, so I think they make that really clear and really interesting. I think that, then we have the love interest, the entrance of Lori Petty as Tyler, and her role sort of between two worlds. I absolutely adore Lori Petty. I think we've only talked about her once.
I think so, yeah.
In
A League of Their Own.
Yeah, No Crying in Baseball. And she's just delightful. And I think she's great in this movie. I think she's particularly great in this movie because she's cast so against type. Like, this is not the type you would expect in this movie. She knows it's not the type you'd expect in this movie, that she is not that type. And I think she just plays it to a T.
Yeah, she does that so well, and she just takes that role and just embodies that surfer chick that's not just kind of the beach bimbo. And it's great seeing her in this as the love interest. And again, I think that goes a lot to Bigelow's choices to find a way to tell a story that felt more authentic and had some more interesting stuff to think about and look at. And also that, brings up another interesting comparison, because I think Teresa Palmer, who is in the remake, is just a lot less interesting. And they try to do some things with her part to spice it up a bit more in the remake. But that, I think, was one of the biggest failings of that film, is that relationship and how it ended up unfolding.
That's sad.
Yeah, Teresa Palmer has not ever quite wowed me. I wasn't thrilled when I saw her. I didn't think I was going to get much. Like I said, they try to do some stuff with her in the film, but it's never set up, and it just kind of turns into something that it throws something at you suddenly at this point late in the film, and it's like, well, that was an odd choice to throw in out of the blue, and then that's it. And so it really kind of was a disappointing turn in that one.
Well, I think the only thing that really could have improved my impression of Point Break is that, had it been made at a time where, like now, like today, where Lori Petty could have been the strong, dominating woman and, not have had to have the sex scene. You know what I mean? Like, this felt like this is a movie that could have made it all the way through without the romance. Because that angle for me was pretty anemic.
Well, and that leads to one of my my gripes with the film is she, gets upset with him when she finds out that he's been lying to her. And I will say, I mean, he's a terrible person. I mean, it's exactly what a cop or an FBI agent is going to do. They're going to find a way to get in. And he's a terrible person for exploiting the fact that her parents were killed when she was young to get in close to her. And I mean,
but
that's
then he
terrible.
changed his mind, Andy. He changed his mind and really, really fell in love.
You're right, Utah. But no, the problem is that it's not that she gets upset. I mean, I like that she gets upset and pretty much that's it.
She should get upset. That's a good thing.
Yeah. But then you get to the end and, she gets kidnapped and he's still trying to save her and all this stuff because he doesn't want her to get killed because he does have the feels. But then you get to the end and they free her and they come together and reunite. And I'm like, ugh. Why? I mean, I get, okay, maybe it's just because they're isolated in the middle of nowhere and she has no one else to say, oh, thank God I'm finally free from that psycho. But still, it's just, I didn't buy those moments of her all of a sudden and, him coming together in each other's arms.
I didn't either. And maybe that's what leaves me with the sour taste in my mouth about her and the relationship angle. Like, I'm really okay with her teaching him how to surf. I'm okay with them kind of being friends and being friendly. And then, the benefit of, 20 years of, or more, God, good Lord, way too many years of, movies and relationship movies and cop movies is just, it's hard to watch this and not feel a little bit fatigued, in that relationship. I think she could have been a better character than that. And it's really disappointing to hear that they didn't do something smarter with, the remake. Lots of opportunity for that.
Yeah, and I'm trying not to spoil what happens in that because they do try to do something more interesting with her as a character. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work. I didn't think it just fell flat.
Let's talk about the law enforcement angle then. As old Keanu, Johnny Utah is walking both sides. His other world is with Gary Busey and John C. McGinley as Ben Harp, his boss.
Yeah, I think that it's an effective story. I mean, I don't mind it. It felt like 90s action writing, though, like at the open when you've got, okay, he's the new guy in the division. He's from the other coast and he's got a boss who instantly has a gripe with him. Like, it felt like we were watching something straight out of Beverly Hills Cop. It has that vibe, and I was like, okay. It felt very much of its time. It wasn't that great. I still like John C. McGinley. I buy them all in their roles, but it was one of the kind of lamer elements of that aspect of the story.
I think John C. McGinley starts out on an enormous high. That walk and talk in the beginning where he's welcoming is so good. It's so good. And there are very few actors who are better equipped to handle 90s action movie police sergeant dialogue than John C. McGinley. It's like he was made for it. It is
very
so
specific.
Tell me I'm not right. He is amazing, amazing in this part. And even though it's brief, unfortunately, he sets the bar very high and goes way down from there. And it becomes, his screaming fit and the completely irrational good leader, bad subordinate angle that he takes on against Johnny Utah without listening to the, evidence, listening to his people. It just becomes, it's just so tired. And I get really tired of seeing him, it's not even that rewarding when he gets punched because he's so ridiculous.
That was pretty lame, yeah.
And you know what it is? I compare it to, to Die Hard, right? Which handles this, I think, better, but I'm trying to put my finger on why.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just felt like there was, that film allowed for more opportunities for conversations to happen, whether it's between McClane and the head of the department, or the head of department and the FBI guys, or, or Al in the head. Like, there were a lot more people involved to kind of keep that going. This one, McGinley started on a more, I still wasn't thrilled, but at least he was had a more interesting aspect to him. And then it just kind of went downhill from there and just became nothing but a caricature.
Anyhow, I liked him clearly more than you, but he definitely doesn't stand up over the course of the film. And, in fact, there are some really weird moments between Busey and Keanu, but the nice thing about it is Busey and Keanu at least are on the same page early on in the movie. And I think that's something that's a little bit unique in their relationship, that in fact, they agree, and it's not just one cop against the world. It becomes the two of them.
Yeah, that was nice.
All right. So how did this movie get made?
Well, this was something where I think it was the writer Rick King who had this idea. He was on the beach reading the newspaper, and it was talking about the high rate of bank robberies in LA. And he was on the beach and he saw these surfers, and he just kind of had this idea of bringing it all together. And so he brought on this writer, Peter Iliff, who he had write this script. And I think he had known Peter. Like, Peter had a script that the studio had optioned or something, like an action film, and King thought that he might be a guy to kind of take on this task of writing this script. So the two of them kind of put the story together, and then Iliff wrote the script. And that was it. It was a script called Johnny Utah. And that was the original name of the script. And at the time, they got Ridley Scott on to direct it. And they did a casting call. And Matthew Broderick, they brought him on. They offered him the role of Johnny Utah. Some other names of people that auditioned include Johnny Depp, Charlie Sheen, Val Kilmer, Willem Dafoe. Even Patrick Swayze auditioned as Johnny Utah. But they started working on the script on the film for this. And I think it sounds like they got 5 months into building all the sets and everything. And then something fell apart. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but the whole movie fell apart, and it was shut down. And that was it. The whole thing kind of, was shelved again. And then it was 4 years later. And everybody involved had gone away. And then James Cameron and Kathryn Bigelow, they somehow came across it, and they decided to rework the script a little bit. They kind of did their own pass of it and got it made. Now, I'm not exactly sure of the complete, like all those names that I rattled off as far as who auditioned for Johnny Utah. Were they auditioning when it was Ridley Scott's film or for Kathryn Bigelow? I'm not exactly sure, but all those names kind of came by. I think Patrick Swayze actually auditioned for Bigelow, and they ended up saying, no, we'd rather you play Bodhi. But yes, the film was renamed from Johnny Utah to Riders on the Storm because they were trying to find something that had a little more of the surfing element. They named it that after the Doors song, but still feeling that it had nothing to do with the movie, they finally hit upon the term Point Break, which a Point Break, Pete, do you know what a Point Break is?
Only because I was hoping to stump you with what a point break is.
Oh, excellent. So Point Break is the point where the wave, as it's coming into shore, or really coming in anywhere, when it hits that underground, underwater rise, it hits that, and that's what causes the wave to break. And I will say that was actually something, going back to the remake, that I found interesting, is that they went out to these point breaks that were out like in the middle of the ocean, but where there was like an underwater, like a rise, like an underwater mountain or something. And when a big storm would hit, you'd have the water would come, and then it would hit and make these waves like out in the middle of nowhere. And that was a really cool element that I thought was cool, because they'd all go out in these boats to go find these waves in the middle of nowhere to surf on. It was kind of cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
cool I imagine on the edge of a trench or something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So anyway, that was it though, as far as this movie getting the kickstart. And but what's interesting is James Cameron and Kathryn Bigelow, even though they did rework the script, and we always talk about our pals over at the WGA and the complicated world that they lead as far as trying to attribute who's getting writing credit on any given film, because I don't know if it's just because of their late entry into participation or what, but apparently there was an unresolved issue with the WGA, and neither Cameron nor Bigelow got to get any writing credits on this. It all went to Peter Iliff, with the story credit by Iliff and King.
All right, Dan, let's do the deep scene dive, Andy.
Yes, let's do it. Let's jump on in.
This is the pursuit of Bodhi and team after a robbery, and it includes a handheld running chase through the neighborhoods, the alleys of Los Angeles. And it's very, very cool. Happens at about an hour 3, hour 4 into the movie.
Just to clarify, it actually starts with a car chase, and then it turns into a foot chase, and then there's a gas pump turned into a flamethrower. then there's and rolling in fire, and then there's throwing dogs at people.
That's true. That's true. My favorite part is the foot chase. That's why it includes the foot chase. And you're right. The foot chase also includes the throwing dog at person.
Yes, great way.
And it ends.
Put a dog to use.
It ends in the falling into the LA canals and the shooting guns at the sky and screaming.
Yes, the fantastic hot fuzz moment. That we love so much.
The hot fuzz moment. So yes, you're right. To clarify, it includes a lot more than my favorite part, but it is there. It does. I think the gas station thing. I love that so much because it was so lovingly recreated in Zoolander.
Oh, was it?
What? Oh, was it? Andy.
Yeah, Zoolander is a movie I very intentionally forgot after I watched it.
Oh my God. We'll come back to that. So anyway, this sequence, why does this sequence represent a good one to anchor this conversation, Andy?
Well, this scene does represent a very critical element of the film, which is the bank robbery. You've got the complicated relationship, and this is where everything is really revealed as far as Johnny Utah. He's actually not just a surfing friend. He is actually an FBI agent. And you get all of this coming together in this action sequence, which also really highlights Kathryn Bigelow as an action director, as somebody who really knows how to take these elements of action and bring them together in a very visceral and exciting way, but a way that is very understandable. You kind of know everything that's going on. It's clear. And you still, through the whole thing, really stay connected to all of the people involved. And I'm always impressed the fact that you stay so connected to Bodhi when he's wearing a Ronald Reagan mask through the whole thing. But you get to that end and you see that close-up of him as he's looking, and as he and Utah are looking at each other, and that just extreme close-up of Bodhi's eyes through the mask as he's looking. I mean, you can really feel everything going on there. It's really just incredible direction and storytelling.
I totally agree. And that is, I think, in that foot chase, I think that's the only thing that we see that was actually Patrick Swayze.
I think it is, yeah.
But largely indistinguishable. I think it's amazing stunt work. But I think what's really great about this whole sequence is that it is an obligatory scene, right? We have it is the handoff of power in the narrative, where one side of the chase discovers the true identity and the other side does not. Right. We know that, like, Utah probably has an idea, but not 100% clear. And now we know that Bodhi does. Bodhi knows exactly what's going on. And so
I think that in the scene right before this, that is when Utah figured it all out, when they were on the beach. He sees him mooning. He sees that guy mooning somebody, and all the little bits and pieces come crashing down on him, and it all is clear.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't think it's as clear as it's not as clear as it would be if he'd just seen him without take the mask off. Right? He hasn't seen that yet. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't feel 100% clear. I'd think if it had been 100% clear, he would not have been the first one to run, his face open toward the crew in the masks. I think he would not have done that. So I think this is an obligatory scene, right, where we have this on the grand unveiling, and the chase is so great, and maybe it's even better if they both know that Bodhi keeps the mask on the whole time. Like, he still thinks he's hiding something, or I don't know, that he has a one up, and maybe that's the part of the handoff that is not clear, is that Bodhi doesn't know that Utah knows who he is under the mask.
That's possible.
Somebody does not know something, possible. Andy, and that's what I want to get across.
I don't know, because you get to the end of this foot chase, and I mean,
that's the most important part.
If he knew, then he wouldn't have shot him. But if he didn't know, he would have shot him. So I think it's clear that they all know. They all know what's going on here. A lot of subtext.
I think by the time they get to that final moment with the close-ups on the eyeballs, that is the grand realization that all sides are now clear and in the open. That's what I think. That's what I'm leading up to here. That exchange leading up to the firing the gun in the air is the pivotal scene in their relationship, because it cements the fact that they have been untrue to one another. They now know of this betrayal, and they have to move forward in this new world.
Okay.
And now they have to go skydiving.
Now they have to go.
They're going to celebrate by being really nice to each other.
No, I think that's an interesting take on it. I mean, I still think that everybody knew as soon as they walked into that particular scene what was happening. But again, I think it allows for, a lot of interesting subtext to be happening. You've got one side that's all in masks and they've just robbed this bank. And then you have these two FBI guys pursuing them. And it does allow for some interesting stuff to happen. And whether it's the car chase or the foot chase or the race through the canals or whatever part it is, or wrestling in the fire, I think that it allows for just a lot of opportunity for Bigelow to really kind of play with everything going on here and to give us something that I felt was very unique. I mean, watching I can't remember what they called the camera, like the pogo cam, I think is what they called it. As the Steadicam operator is racing along with, whether it's Bodie or Utah or both, through these little passageways between houses or through houses or down sidewalks or across roads or whatever. It was just really exciting, and I really felt connected to all of the action happening.
That is the real highlight to me, which is using the way they use the camera and keep it nice and both allows us to be focused on the subject as they're running like crazy through these streets and up and over fences and throwing the camera up over the fence, essentially, to keep up with these actors who are running and jumping, and they're crazed. And yet you can totally keep a sense of where the action is, where you're supposed to be following. And it makes so much sense. It makes so much visual sense. There's none of that sort of jiggly monkey nonsense that we have to fight through in a lot of films.
It actually reminded me in retrospect of the fantastic single camera, effectively action work that we got in The Secret in Their Eyes, where through the soccer stadium, that was just an amazing opportunity to really kind of throw us directly into the action and really see everything that was happening. That was an incredibly effective way to play that scene. And I think Bigelow, with cuts, does as effective a job here.
I think you're right, and that example is, it's really appropriate, especially when you look at what they could have done and what another director might have done around the sort of being pushed around in a crowd in The Secret in Their Eyes, as we're in the stadium. And instead, no, that movie is, that sequence is super solid, just like this one. Like, it is super solid from the moment they jump out of the back of the van to the moment we're, stopped in the canal.
And you mentioned kind of getting pushed around in the crowd. That was something else that I found so exhilarating about this, was the way that she played with all of the extras and all of the other people through this chase, where you have these women kind of in, whether it's watering their front yard or doing the laundry in their house, who kind of get just plowed over by Bodie as he races by, or the kids on the bicycles that almost the Utah almost runs into, or the guy in the garbage truck, or again the dog. I mean, there were so many obstacles for them to kind of fight through. I found it just really kind of fun, the way that they kept playing with everything that was going on. It wasn't an empty environment for them to race through. It was full of people, as it really would be.
Keanu Reeves obviously is central to this as Johnny Utah. He is, he's a great athlete.
He is. And what I think is interesting is this is really kind of the start of his action career. I mean, this was his first action movie, and man, I think that it's interesting looking at the line from what he does here all the way through like the John Wick films and the Matrix films and everything. It's a very interesting line and career path for him.
Swayze as Bodhi, also strong. Interesting. My memory of Swayze is that he's a much bigger dude. He is not that just giant of a person, right? He's not like the Rock giant, but he's just very fit, but totally, I think he nails the chill Zen master vibe here.
You know, Patrick Swayze, I mean, he was kind of very much that guy that everyone was swooning over at the time. I mean, he had just done Dirty Dancing a few years before, and Roadhouse, and Next of Kin, and Ghost. So whether it was like the raw action films or the kind of the amazing dance films that he was doing, or just the romance of Ghost and just kind of all of that sort of stuff, like he was an actor who I think really showed all those wonderful sides of what he could do, and being raised kind of a dancer and all of the stuff that brought to him as an actor, and then putting him into a surf bank robbery film. It's like that background, I think, was just perfect for him. It was exactly what he needed to embody Bodhi.
It absolutely was. I started talking with folks that we were doing this movie, and many of them had forgotten that he passed away back in 2009, fighting pancreatic cancer for a long time, and he really deteriorated at the end. It was a very sad loss. I think he was just a great talent and super fun to watch him at his real prime.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, like we hardly see him in this chase because he's wearing his Reagan mask. And at the time they shot this, Swayze was actually in Europe doing his press tour for Ghost. And so the vast majority of the scene that we're watching, it's all Scott Wilder, who is his stunt double. So, but he does just as good during the running as I'm sure Swayze would have.
Well, he really does. And even Swayze signed off on it because Swayze, you know, as you mentioned, he does his own stuff, right? He really wanted to do this run, and but even he signed off. He says, "Yeah, that looks like me. Did a great job." So
yeah,
there you go. Gary Busey as Pappas.
Yep, he's. I mean, he's not. His part in the scene is, not huge. I think what cracks me up about him though is he's really the impetus that kicks off the scene as it begins, because he is. They're on a stakeout essentially, waiting to see if these guys are going to show up to rob the bank, and he knows that there's this sandwich shop around the corner, and obsessively tells Utah, "Go buy me 2 of their meatball subs because they're the best in the world." No, you got to get 2 of them. 2
sandwiches. 2 sandwiches.
It's like the strangest way to kick off the scene, but it actually was really funny, and it allowed for Keanu to be out of the car, and it set up the situation well. But it was such a strange start to the scene.
It's a strange start and a strange use of comedy, right? It becomes a little bit slapstick because Keanu's at the sandwich place, and he's like the car pulls up behind them over his shoulder, and he never looks. Right. And I think that's just that's really, really great. You mentioned that he had he had his terrible injury in '88, and so he was out for a little while. This was really, right in the middle of his career. I mean, he's done probably. I can't tell if he's done more since then. Where this falls in the sort of litany of 174 credits that Gary Busey has to his name. The guy is an amazingly prolific actor, and just a lot of fun to watch his crazy on screen. He has absolutely cornered the market on this kind of crazy, to the point where I don't care that he was in Sharknado 4. I don't care. I'd put him in Point Break 3, and I'd be just as happy.
Do you think it was confusing for him that he was in Point Break, and then a few years later he was in Breaking Point?
Breaking Point. Do you think, Andy, better question, do you think he ever bothered to ask a question about that? Do you think he knows most of the titles of the things that he's in anymore? I don't think he cares.
Gary.
I love Gary Busey. And it gives me a chance to say, we've talked about Gary Busey before, and you should search YouTube for the Gary Busey and G.A. Lorda Sartain TV show, because they grew up in their formative years on television in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Gary Busey, Gaylord Sartain. They did some great coach football player comedy.
Very funny.
Yeah.
Well, then as far as the rest of the troupe in Swayze's gang, we've got James LaGrosse as Roach. Returning.
Nice to see him again. He made it through Near Dark.
He
apparently.
did, and Bigelow brought him along. John Philbin as Nathaniel and Bo Jesse Christopher as Gromit. And those last two are the real surfers that they cast to be a part of this. And
so smart to put these guys in that crew.
What I found impressive was that they actually cast real surfers, but they actually could carry scenes. Like when they were sitting around the fire and Gromit is like, kind of afraid. He's like concerned that something's going to go wrong. It's like, I really bought it. It wasn't just some bad actor who happens to be a good surfer. It's like they actually did a good job.
Camera, Donald Peterman was behind the camera.
Yeah, we already talked a little bit about the Pogo cam, but it was basically it was a 35 millimeter camera, but they really kind of took as much off of it as they could. And they basically had it on a gyro stabilizer from a Steadicam with a loop on top. So James Murrow, the Steadicam operator, could see what he was doing while he was running as fast as he could, either in front of or behind the actors. So pretty interesting little setup they devised that I imagine has been utilized and cleaned up in all the various easy rigs and everything else they have these days.
Speaking of clever rigs, you want to talk a little bit about how, even though it wasn't in the sequence, how they ended up shooting many of the principal skydiving close-ups?
Yeah, it was really cool to see because I was really impressed with the skydiving footage, the way that they intercut real skydivers with the actors. And what they did for the actors, they had them on these rigs. They were kind of like crane rigs that had these telescoping arms, and they had a platform, and the actors were in their outfits, and there was kind of a platform kind of that they were laying on built into their outfit, and they were propped up, and they had giant fans underneath them blowing up. And then the camera was also on one of these telescoping arms, and it was it had that loose movement, and then they would just shoot them with just nothing but sky in the background to get these shots that looked like they were really skydiving and having these conversations in midair. Really clever, very smart way to do it.
Yeah, it really was. It was and seamless. It reminded me actually, weirdly, of Mary Poppins and the laughing sequence. The way they did all those sorts of clever platforms and things to shoot the floating sequences. It reminded me just exactly of that setup. So it was a funny little throwback. Production design, Peter Jameson, along with hair and makeup, Paul Abascal, hair, Wes Dawn, Greg LaCava, Michael Mills, makeup. The entire, I just bought the world that they had set up. I even bought Patrick Swayze's hair.
Well, his hair was just, that's what made.
That's why you bring Swayze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was just crazy Swayze hair. Specifically to our scene that we really should mention is Glenn Wilder, the stunt coordinator, and just the amazing work he did in rehearsals ahead of time, training these actors to be able to do these as many of the stunts themselves as possible. And I think my hunch, I don't know if this is really the case, but knowing how Keanu Reeves has really kind of adopted that into kind of what we see him now bringing to the table in his action films, I feel like it's probably all started here, and just that whole idea of wanting to be in the action, wanting to really get that sense, and working with the stunt coordinator to really kind of find the tools that he needed to have in order to pull it off himself.
To that point, I want to bring up Howard E. Smith, who was behind the editing of the film, in working with Donald Peterman and under the auspices of making sense of the sequence. There are a number of elements in here that you could just get plowed over visually if they weren't cut right. And the dog, you brought up the dog in particular, that is very fast. And yet I don't ever feel like I lose it.
Yeah, and it has to be fast, especially because it's obviously not a real dog. It's completely faked. But they do that so well. Where I was completely convinced that it was a dog until I went through and watched it a few times, and the credits point out clearly that it wasn't.
It's not a dog, right?
Yeah. Right. And so, but yeah, just the way that it's edited and the sound, the way that that's mixed in too. I mean, you're completely convinced that that's exactly what just happened.
And Howard Smith is a pretty regular editor for Bigelow, and did Near Dark, in fact, and Cameron too. He did The Abyss and Strange Days and kind of Old Hat.
Well, and Glenn Wilder, did stunts with James Cameron on True Lies, and so so again, it's a lot of that same club and everything. So, and sadly, Glenn Wilder did just pass away last year. He was probably in the in memoriam, actually. Yeah. Now that I think about it,
although they skipped a lot of people, so who knows?
They did. Who knows?
What you think of the music? Good action score.
It was kind of a light 90s action score, particularly in this sequence. There's not a lot of music. In fact, a lot of it's just the sound effects and the world. The music does kick in a couple times, and it's, I think Mark Isham does a fine job with the music here. It never completely blew me away. I think what worked better for me in the case of this particular film was the soundtrack. I felt like Bigelow and her team found some really great songs that worked well for the context of this movie, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or Concrete Blonde or Rat, of all things, or Public Image. Just a lot of great songs that worked really well in context of the movie.
That's just crazy mashups, Andy. That's practically Eddie Vedder singing Tom Petty.
Practically.
Things that it would never happen. We got a few little notes of interest. Notes of interest, Andy. Facts and tidbits that you have uncovered due to your cinema sleuthing. And the first involves the Bodie parachute jump.
Right. When Utah has no parachute and jumps out of the plane to catch up with Bodie. Mythbusters actually did their own little busting of this myth, and they determined that Utah and Bodie would not have been able to free fall for as long as they did, which was close to 90 seconds, nor would they have been able to have a conversation in midair. It is a little too loud. You can't actually hear people that well while you're falling. The wind is a little noisy. But they did say that Utah could conceivably have caught up with Bodie. The way that skydivers can kind of position their bodies, he could have streamlined his body so that he would shoot down and actually catch up with Bodie.
Right.
So,
if Bodie didn't know, that's legit. Like, I can buy that. I buy it.
Absolutely.
I've always wondered that whole leg lock thing, like if you're just holding on to a guy in a parachute and the parachute, you're going to let go. I'm just saying.
I don't think you'd be letting go. I think you'd be ripped.
You'd be ripped. Your arms would be just ripped, torn asunder, Andy. Torn asunder. This is another opportunity for Keanu to play a football star.
Yes, that's right. This is the first of two movies where he plays a former Ohio State quarterback. The other movie was The Replacements that he was in.
I think I had a good time with that movie. I don't think I hated that movie. I don't think I hated it. It's very light.
Yeah.
If I recall. Very light. I might need to see it again. This is something you found that I did not know anything about. Point Break Live. What is that?
Well, you did know about it because we have talked about it on the show before, although I cannot remember where. I don't know if it was when we talked about The Matrix or when we talked about Strange Days or something, but we did bring this up at some point in some past show, maybe an eagle-eared listener. Can you say eagle-eared?
No,
is that weird?
I don't think that's a thing.
What would you say? Bat-eared listener?
Bat-eared, maybe bat-eared or elephant-eared.
Elephant-eared. Yeah, I just don't think we're painting our listeners with a pretty light here.
But they still make out better than we do.
Yeah,
sharp-eared. Yeah, that's good. Sharp. Yes, good.
May recall and let us know where we talked about Point Break Live, but this is a cult theater thing that originated because people were so inspired by the movie. And basically what happens is they put on the show, but the role of Johnny Utah is played by an audience member chosen by the crowd after they do a quick little audition. And then for the duration of the play, this Keanu performer has to read all of their lines from cue cards. to, quote, capture the rawness of a Keanu Reeves performance, even from those who generally think themselves incapable of acting.
Well, it's awesome. And you're right. I really, really don't remember us talking about that. And I'm sure I loved it then as much as I love the whole concept right now tonight. That's fantastic.
Want to go see that.
Me
it would be so
too.
Fun. I wonder how they do the foot chase. Do you think they throw a dog on stage?
Maybe they just run back and forth.
Yes, maybe.
This is no Tarantino script, but apparently you've been doing some counting.
Oh, yes. They do say the F word 105 times in this film.
So that's something.
Earning their R is what you say.
How to do at award season.
This is one of those movies that's not getting the Oscar nominations.
What?
Pete.
I'm shocked.
I know. But you know who did nominate the film? Everybody's favorite, the MTV Movie Awards.
Oh.
That's right. Everybody's favorite award.
Everybody's favorite.
The movie was nominated not one, not two, but 3 MTV Movie Awards. Both Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze got nominated for Most Desirable Male. Only one could take the award home, Pete, and it was Keanu. Keanu was the most desirable male by the MTV Movie Award crowd back in 1991.
Wait. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, Swayze all the way.
Really?
Swayze
You're a
all the way,
Swayze?
baby. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think I'm a Keanu. I'm a Keanu, but I have the benefit of John Wick.
You do. Yes, you do.
Maybe had this been 1991, us having this conversation, maybe I would have said. I wonder if we had this conversation in 1991.
Anyway, the other award it was nominated for was the Best Action Sequence Award. And that was for the second jump from the plane where Utah catches Bodhi falling, which we just talked about. But it did lose to the LA freeway chase in Terminator 2, which also beat out the helicopter blade sequence from Last Boy Scout, which I don't even remember from when we talked about that movie. And it also beat out Backdraft and The Hard Way. So...
it's not at the very end on top of the sign.
Oh, right. He falls. He knocks the guy off and the guy falls and goes right through the helicopter blades. Okay. Yeah. Now we've already talked about the remake, 2015 remake, but was there news of a actual Point Break 2? You know, they had actually considered making a Point Break 2 with Keanu reprising his role and actually Patrick Swayze reprising his role as Bodhi, apparently having survived that massive wave at the end of the film. But unfortunately, because of the real life death of Patrick Swayze, it put an end to the plans and that's it. Never ended up happening. And I don't think the remake did well enough where it's going to warrant a sequel.
My hopes are dashed. How'd it do in the box office?
Well, Bigelow was given a cool $24 million to make her surfing heist movie, which is about $42.5 million in today's dollars. Her movie was given a prime summer weekend to open July 12th, 1991, opposite Disney's 101 Dalmatians re-release, Boys in the Hood, and Regarding Henry. None of those films, however, could topple Bigelow's then-husband's liquid metal juggernaut, Terminator 2, which was in its second week of release and easily held the #1 spot for 2 more weeks. Considering the film's status, though, it's surprising that both the 101 Dalmatians re-release and Boys in the Hood beat Point Break out. In fact, Point Break fell out of the top 10 after just 3 weeks. But that being said, the movie still found its audience, raking in $43.2 million domestically and $40.3 million internationally, giving it a total adjusted gross of $147.8 million and adjusted profit per finished minute of almost $864,000. Another win for Bigelow. In fact, it was her highest grossing film until Zero Dark 30.
Oh, I buy that.
Yeah.
I had a good time with this movie, Andy. There is some ridiculous stuff in it, but I had a good time at this movie. It's some great action directing. The surfing was fun. The casting was great. The love interest was not the typical, dumb bimbo character. It was a character that was rich and textured, and in fact, the mano a mano nature of the heist cop relationship was strong for me here. It's no Heat, but it definitely deserves to be in the same category.
Although Heat was really missing a wrestle between its two people in the waves of Australia.
True. Could have used a wrestle.
We didn't get that. It could have had a good old wrestle in the water.
Yeah. And we didn't actually talk about the final scene in this movie, and when essentially Johnny Utah sends Bodhi off to die in the cold hands of the great Neptune.
I love it. I think it's the perfect end for a film, the film and everything that they're doing here.
It is a perfect end to this film. I think that's it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
No hard feelings.
No, and you're right. I mean, I had a blast watching this film. This is easily a film I would return to and watch again. I still have some issues with it, but this is why we are doing our Bigelow series again, because she can take a film that otherwise would have been kind of a pretty subpar 90s action film and does something interesting with it that makes it exciting to watch. So I was very thrilled to have this on on the charts this time.
Me too. All right. With that, Andy, it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you will see our list of all of the movies that we've talked about on this show. If you swipe over in your show notes and you tap Flickchart, it'll take you over to this movie on Flickchart where you can add it to your list. And let's see how your ranking stacks up to our ranking. Andy?
First up, we have Point Break or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is the Noomi version, not the Rooney version.
I am Dragon Tattoo.
I'm almost Point Break on this one.
Yeah, but almost is not Point Break.
No, but I feel like I am Point
almost
Break.
Is not. No, I think you said almost. You said almost.
I did. I know I did. But I feel like I feel like I'm going with Point Break.
I'm pretty hardcore Dragon Tattoo on this. I think we have to actually open the bidding by going to that.
I will give it to you. I'm hesitant to, but I am going to give it to you.
All right.
But yeah, man, I had so much fun with this movie. All right, Point Break or Atlantic City? Easily Point Break for me.
Easily Point Break. Yeah.
I like they're showing the Spanish poster, and in Spanish it's called "They Call Him Bodhi."
Oh, I like that.
That's a great title. All right, Point Break.
What is Point Break literally like transliterated in Spanish?
Yeah, I'd be curious about that. I don't know.
Punto Breco.
I don't think that's what it is.
No Spanish.
Point Break or King's Row? Point Break for me.
Point Break.
Point Break or Midnight Run? Oh, Midnight Run for me.
Midnight Run, yeah.
I'm surprised that for some reason that you picked Midnight Run.
You should be, but
in my head, I feel
Grodin.
like you didn't like that one.
No, I love Grodin.
I know where this one's going for you. Point Break or Field of Dreams? Absolutely Field of Dreams for me.
Punto Breco.
Well, this one we are going to have to go to the mountain.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Rock. Oh, all right. Fair and square.
Point Break or What's Up, Doc? Ooh, that's a tough one.
It's not that hard for me. It's Point Break, but I could be pushed.
Yeah, I'm going to say Point Break, but it still is a tough one. Like, What's Up, Doc stuck really well in my head. That sounds weird. Stuck well in my head. Yeah. Anyway, that's how it is. All right, Point Break or The Great Wall? Point Break.
I'm sorry. That shocked me. Yeah, Point Break. I'd forgotten we even talked about that movie.
Yeah. Right. Well, Point Break or Infernal Affairs?
Infernal Affairs.
I'm going to say Point Break.
Really?
I have issues in both of the films, but I'm still going to say Point Break.
Oh, I'm a little disappointed.
I'm willing to be swayed.
Are you willing to be
for money?
Swayzed?
I'm willing to be swayzed.
I just think I just think that the Infernal Affairs came across with so much more gravitas and the execution, literally the execution was such a dramatic and fantastic turn in that movie that it just really sticks with me. It was a great film.
Yeah, you're right. You Swayzed me. All right. Well, that puts Point Break at 205 on our chart. 205 out of 342. So it's not super high. It's at about 40%. But again, we have talked about a lot of movies that we really love.
We have, and I think once you get over that point, it actually, I don't know. What did it do on your personal flick chart?
Again, my personal flick chart, I don't think it ended up as high as I was thinking it would have. It landed at 1440 out of 3930, so that's about a 63%. I personally feel like it would have been higher, but again, there's just a lot of movies I really like.
That's fascinating because it ended up at 367 on my list out of 1013, which is almost exactly the same. It's about 64%. And if I were to go by the algorithm, the Flickchart algorithm, that should be 3 stars over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel, and that feels a little bit low to me. Maybe not too low, but a little bit low.
Yeah, I'm really surprised how much I liked this movie. I'm giving it 4 stars and a like.
4 stars, really?
Yeah, it's everything that it needed to be. Yes, it has some issues as far as the romance relationship, as far as the relationship with Keanu's boss, but on the whole, this is just a delightful movie. So absolutely, 4 out of 5.
All right, you've swayzed me, Andy. You've swayzed me. 4 out of 5 and a like.
There it is, folks. Point Break.
Who knew? And where did Point Break 2015 end up for you on the star rating?
That's a great question, Pete. It ended up at 3 stars. And really, it was just because as much as the story kind of largely falls flat for me, it was still a really fun movie to watch. It has a lot of really exciting action sequences. I thought they did a great job putting all of the action bits together. I struggle with the relationship. It's one that I feel is going to be much more quickly forgotten, but it still was fun.
All right.
I was really surprised that I liked it as much as I did.
I'm going to check it out. You're going on vacation, so I can catch up on some movies that you gave me to watch and then didn't give me the time to watch them. So this is going to be one of them.
Excellent.
And apart from that, Andy, we're done now with Point Break. We're leaving the ocean. We're leaving the water. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, we're leaving the water and we're going right over to Detroit. just where we wanted to go for vacation after the beach.
That's what you do. You go to Detroit. Okay. All right. Well, I really look forward to this. Have you seen it yet?
I have. Yes. I just watched it from the first time a few days ago.
Excellent.
I'm very curious to talk about. This is her film that she just did last year.
Yeah. This gets us pretty current. So, that's part of the reason I'm really interested in seeing this is to close the gap between 1991 or Near Dark before that and see how she has grown. Again, that's one of the things that I really appreciated about or the last time we talked about Bigelow, and I'm very much looking forward to watching this. So that's it. We'll talk about it next week. All right. The next reel could not happen without the hard work of Stephen Smart over in Scotland, running the Instagram stuff, and Ben Steerick helping out over there. Ben Lott at the Blot Spot runs all things on Twitter. Next reel theme is Ragtime Instrumental by Eli Catlin, which you can find on his SoundCloud page. When the movie ends, Andy,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Well, clearly there is a gap between our impression of the film and those over on the Amazon 1-star category. There were some people who didn't like the actual manufacturing of the tapes or the DVDs, but there's a healthy basket, a bouquet of people who legitimately don't like this movie.
Oh, yes, there are.
Yeah. Why don't you kick us off?
Sure. My 1 star is by somebody named Conservative Viewpoint. This was a horrible movie, to say the least. I was greatly disappointed. It was highly immoral, and most of the people hardly had any clothes on. Besides that kind of stuff, the movie portrayed the rebellious, thieving bad guys as the good guys. By the end of the movie, you actually started to feel sorry for the bad guys. Not worth anyone's time.
He didn't seem to be conservative in his viewpoint at all. He didn't hold anything back. Or maybe that was, I'm missing the point.
Look at you. Very funny.
Oh, dear. Well, mine I think I'm going to go with a triumph over marketing over filmmaking. This film is very, very silly. Fair enough if the viewer wishes to see a film that has not even a tenuous link to reality, poorly made, poor attention to detail, real-life representation, and sloppy continuity that is inexcusable in a movie of this budget. My advice to those that go gooey at the mention of Swayze and Reeves, do yourself a favor and buy a poster and watch that for a couple of hours instead.
Wow. There's some advice for you.
Not terrible advice. The poster is hot. Just saying.
It is very hunky.
If you can afford the movie and the poster, that is still your best bet. Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy, and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.